Alright guys, welcome along to another episode of the Martin's World podcast. Guys, before I get into introducing today's guest, I'd like to just remind you that if you want to support the show, support the fight for cannabis legalisation here in Ireland, you can do so by signing up to the patreon.com/Martin's World. Or you can also make a donation in the form of Bitcoin through the link found on martinsworld.ie. And guys, all of the funds that will be gathered there will be used to help fight for cannabis legalisation and to hopefully open the door of a cannabis activist hub here in Cork very soon. So guys, today's guest then is none other than Aimee Brown. Aimee Brown is the campaigner here in Ireland and also a lady who suffers with endometriosis. And endometriosis is an often very painful disorder in which the tissue, similar to the tissue that normally lines the inside of your uterus, called the endometrium, it grows on the outside of your uterus. And that's what endometriosis is. Endometriosis is the most commonly involves ovaries, the fallopian tubes, and the tissues lining your pelvis. So not a very nice disorder to be suffering from. So Aimee sat down with me and had a conversation about her journey, I suppose, in the condition, and also the suffering that she goes through because of the lack of access to medical cannabis here in Ireland. So thanks very much, Aimee, for taking the time out of your day to chat with me. And everybody else, guys, I hope you enjoyed the interview. So sit back, relax, spark up, and enjoy. Aimee Brown, welcome along to the Martin's World podcast. It's a pleasure to be able to sit across the table from somebody actually for a change. All of my other interviews have been done Zoom and all of that kind of stuff. So welcome along. It's great to have you here. If you wouldn't mind just quickly introducing yourself, I suppose, to the audience. You're an active campaigner out there, but maybe everybody out there hasn't heard of Aimee Brown. So could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so thanks first of all for having me on. It's great to, be a part of what you're doing. Like, your platform is great and I love and respect what you're doing. So yeah, I started using cannabis when I was about 15. It was a lifestyle choice I made then, and I knew that was going to be my path. It didn't go down very well with most of the people in my life at the time, family and whatnot, but I stuck with it, and it turned out to be quite beneficial to me, not only recreationally, but also medicinally. So I suffer with a condition called endometriosis. Mm-hmm. It affects 1 in 10 women, and actually it affects a very small percentage of men as well. But it's a tiny, tiny percentage. So it's the most aggressive, benign disease there is, and there's no cure. We don't know how it starts, and the best kind of possible treatment, the gold standard treatment, is expert excision surgery.
Yeah.
Now, they're doing trials in Barcelona on endometriosis patients with cannabis. And this stemmed from an experiment they did with rats and mice. So basically, they injected endometrial implants into the mice and then gave them THC. And what it did was not only reduce the size of the actual lesions, it also helped with the anxiety associated with the chronic pain in the mice. So that was an incredible kind of milestone, if you like, in research, because endometriosis is way too underfunded, and under-researched. For the amount of women it affects, it's ridiculous. Yeah,
I think I seen was a Varadkar or somebody in the news there not too long ago, kind of patting themselves on the back about opening up a new wing of a hospital specifically for endometriosis. And I think I read something along the lines of that, that this is something that is incredibly underfunded, incredibly under-researched. So.
Yeah, and would you believe that announcement actually led me to have a little mini meltdown? And
really?
I ended up coming off all social media for about 6 weeks, I'd say. So they announced this new clinic, and the CUM put it on their website, and they didn't even get the definition of the disease correct on the website.
Yeah.
So this, apart from the lack of awareness, we have to be so careful about the misinformation that's being circulated as well. So for an advocate like me, an expert patient, if you like, something like that it's like a knife in the heart, and it undoes all the work that the advocates are trying to do in raising awareness and getting the right information out there. So I had half my inbox on Instagram. I blog on Instagram about living with endometriosis, and I talk about travelling to Romania to the specialist team that I went to. So I have a lot of women, you know, reaching out with questions and looking for support and stuff. So half the inbox was really excited about this new clinic that didn't even get the definition of the disease correct and is advertising a multidisciplinary centre. To me, that should reflect a multidisciplinary surgical team, and it doesn't. So in my eyes, it's false advertising. So it was really upsetting to me. So half of it was false hope, and then the other half were the expert patients like me, absolutely fuming over the ordeal, if you like, travesty. Like, it was really, really frustrating. So I felt like everybody didn't realise that I'm a patient as well. I'm suffering as well. Although I'm speaking out, it doesn't mean that I'm not suffering. And I can't just wave a wand or click my fingers and everything is going to be fixed. And I really, really felt the pressure. So I emailed the CUM, and they did end up changing it on the website. They rectified the definition. They never acknowledged my email. Okay. But they did change it. So at least something was done. But the likes of Radcar and those giving themselves a pat on the back, this is all stemming from the work of myself and Kathleen King. We went to Leinster House in December 2019 and gave a presentation in the AV room in Leinster House on the lack of awareness, the lack of education, the delayed diagnosis. I mean, the average diagnosis time is 7 to 10 years. So,
and you experienced something similar to that yourself, wasn't it?
I did. I started suffering pretty badly when I was 11, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was 21.
She's 10 years. So
10 years, and now after getting my notes from the under the Freedom of Information Act, it turns out I was actually being brought to hospital from the age of 8 with urinary issues, vomiting, fainting, and I think it was pelvic pain.
And these are all symptoms of the
all symptoms of endometriosis, and all reflective of where they ended up finding it when they eventually did diagnose me. But unfortunately, in Ireland, they don't have the expertise. So I encourage any woman or person in a position to go to Romania, to the Wellborn Clinic. Dr. Mitrai is fantastic. He's so active on social media, his Instagram and Facebook. He's forever sharing information. I find like here, it's all about ego with the medical professionals. Yeah. And if like even with some GPs, I'm so lucky now to have a good GP. But I kissed me fair share of frogs before I found him, you know. And like they feel you're coming in like you know it all. But really, I do know it all because I've lived with the disease for this long that I've armed myself with information and I know exactly what's what. Yeah. And thank God now this new GP that I have, the first day I met him, he said, look, I'm not going to pretend to know the ins and outs of endometriosis. At this stage, you probably know more than I do. And I sat back and took a deep breath and I was like, you've no idea how grateful I am to hear you acknowledge that. You know, just because to me, and to many women, the psychological trauma and the medical trauma is far worse than any physical pain. And that's saying something because I done a poll on my Instagram and the Facebook asking women who have had kids, what's worse, childbirth or a really bad endo flare? And the majority said they take childbirth any day.
Really, yeah. Okay.
So that's how painful it is. Like, you know, it's a really difficult disease to live with. So cannabis is the only consistency I've had throughout this nightmare of a journey. Like, so it's really important to me for people to know that the stigma is BS. Can I curse?
Yeah, of course.
Fucking bullshit, man. So I feel like it's up to people like me to speak out and break the stigma because. How dare I be criminalised for using something that actually increases my quality of life? Yeah. That actually balances not only the anxiety that comes with chronic illness, but the depression that comes with it as well. Like, I've lost so much over the years through this illness. Like, in school, I got ridiculed by teachers because I was bleeding through my uniform and I had to go home twice in one day to get changed. Like, the yearhead snapped at me. Go home and stay home. until your period passes. You're wasting everyone's time.
Jeez.
Like, I was 14 years old, the second time in a day, bleeding through my clothes, bent over in pain, and I was left to walk home feeling ashamed
and
because of the way she made me feel.
That's a symptom of the endometriosis as well, excessive bleeding.
Extremely heavy bleeding,
Jeez,
irregular bleeding.
And for a young person, having to endure that, like, in such a bloody backwards kind of it's classroom anyway, but a teacher right to say that to a young girl, that's
I was kind of labelled a drama queen. You know what I mean? Couldn't be that bad. What do you mean? How could it be that bad? And even, like, it was hard for me, even my sisters, to understand, because they never suffered like that. I have 3 sisters who are all 20, 21 and 23 years older than me, and never did they suffer. So, like, to them, it was crazy. And the GP, when my mum brought me to the doctor within months of getting me first period, like, I was in bits, and he put me on the pill, and my sisters went mad, like, thinking the contraceptive pill, she's not having sex, she's 11 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Not understanding the hormone side of things. So even that stigma was something that I had to deal with. And, like, in school, I feel like young girls are brought up and led to believe that periods are supposed to be painful when they're actually not. They're not supposed, like, if they're interfering with your life, if you're missing school or if you're missing work because of your periods, that's not normal. But normalizing the conversation about periods is another challenge that we have.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's backwards in my opinion. Now, we have made a lot of kind of strides, I suppose, in recent years, and, like, it's helpful, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be, in my opinion. You know, young girls need to know the signs to look out for, and they shouldn't be feeling like a drama queen, or like, maybe it is all in my head. You know, like, you do end up questioning yourself. Yeah. And it's just the mental and emotional torture. It's horrific, like.
And where's that now with the your health professionals? Are they anyway less stigmatic at all towards you with your condition and how you're treating it at all? Some, yeah. Yeah. But you haven't got legal access to the cannabis here yet through your specialist?
No. I went through all the paperwork and I got all the forms. Yeah. And I formally requested it.
For the ministerial license.
For the ministerial license. It was actually through the gynae that was overseeing me at the time. Biggest mistake of my life. But anyway, she refused. It was okay for her to prescribe me 450 milligrams of Plexia daily, but it wasn't okay for her to oversee a ministerial license application. So she told me I had to wait for the pain specialist.
Yeah. And was she attached to any particular hospital, or was she an independent worker?
No, Tala Hospital.
Tala Hospital, okay. No, so you hear some hospitals have a policy against their consultants applying for ministerial licenses.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, I was just wondering, were you going to mention one of the two that were mentioned to me?
I don't think they're under that umbrella, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'd have to actually look into that. But no, she told me I had to wait for the pain specialist. I had been on the list for the pain team since 2016. I didn't get my first appointment until last year, until 2020. Jeez. So at this point, like, I had lost my job. I had to move 2 counties, 2 hours away from my GP, from my family, from my friends. Like, I lost everything because after the last surgery I had in Tala Hospital, I never made it back to work. I was worse than I ever was prior. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a risk, I suppose, that, or was it just due to negligence, or?
Well, in my opinion, it was that what the disease that they excised, right, well and good, but what they didn't take was aggravated. That's my, I'm not a medical professional, obviously. I don't know the pathology. I don't understand the science of it all, but to me, what they left behind was so severely aggravated that I was in a 12 out of 10 pain every day. Oh, constantly. Like, and the Plexia made me feel so sick. It affected my eyesight. Like, my eyes were always itchy and sore. I'd have the shakes trying to do my hot water bottle. I'd be burning myself because it was just absolutely awful. And the nausea as well. Like, I would generally tend to be pukey anyway. But that level of nausea was something that I could not have coped with.
And was that covered? Would you have been covered by a medical card with the Plexia and stuff like that? Then
it was all covered.
All covered, no problems.
So during this really bad time when I was pretty much bedbound with the pain and stuff, I reached out for mental health support because I was suicidal. Like I really was. I couldn't understand how anybody was expected to barely exist like this, you know, in so much pain every day. So I waited 12 months and I finally got an appointment. And on this particular day, it was so severe that my mum is in her 70s with heart failure and loads of other conditions. She has it's like a Zimmer frame with a trolley, like on wheels.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that I had to use that day, going into this state psychologist. Wow. Within 10 minutes, she told me she can no longer see me as long as I'm using cannabis.
Within 10 minutes, like?
Within 10 minutes.
That is ridiculous.
And I wouldn't mind the first 10 minutes. I wasn't nearly as composed as I am now.
Yeah.
I was sobbing my heart out. I was trying to get everything all out at once because I'd been so alone in it for so long, waiting for somebody to talk to, like to listen to me, to have compassion. And she told me she couldn't see me as long as I was using cannabis. So how that didn't push me over the edge to this day, I'll still never know. But I will never forget the heartbreak and the sheer, dismissal that I felt that day, and the discrimination, like the cheek of it. How, like, she doesn't know what it's like to live in my body for 10 minutes, let alone live with it, and this state has this judgment against people. So my response to her on that day was, if I was a chemo patient and I had a ministerial license and I was getting it under the MCAP program, would you refuse to see me then?
Yeah.
What is the difference between this severe, and I mean severe, nausea with Plexia and really bad nausea with chemo? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, it's so upsetting that the lines are there for certain things and not for others.
Yeah, and when you have access to cannabis, then I suppose you're getting it then illegally. But how does that help with your condition then? In terms, say, versus the Plexia, does it reduce the pain?
It does. It not only does it reduce the pain, it relaxes me overall body so that I'm not always holding myself with the pain.
Yeah.
So that it helps with me mood, as I said, with the depression and anxiety. The physical pain definitely helps with. I have one particular source that I can often rely on for the bong that you use.
Yeah.
He has one of them, but it's shatter. And
right, yeah.
Like when I'm really, really bad and I call into him, it's great. Like I think it's 80% THC or something.
Yeah, that's some of the higher
like
strength extracts. Yeah.
It's like my uterus is smiling when I'm walking back out the door. Like it's unreal the difference that it makes so instantly as well. You know, so my issue is I'm fighting for full legalization because adults should have the right to choose what they want to consume. Simple as, like, that. To me, that's the bottom line. But then for me personally, I'm part of a lot of endometriosis groups in the likes of the States and different countries, Australia and stuff. And it's actually prescribed to endo patients in Australia. In Australia, in certain parts.
Yeah.
Certain parts. There's a bit of, I think,
there's different territories. Yeah.
But in certain parts it is prescribed. And then also the girls in the States have access to cannabis pessaries. So obviously suppository is you insert anally, pessary is vaginally. So the THC pessaries are unbelievable. They're a game changer for women with chronic pelvic pain. Yeah. And it breaks me heart. I'm in these groups and I'm seeing this girl say, oh my God, totally recommend these. This, that and the other happened. I was able to have penetrative sex for the first time in 6 months because of these. You know, like, it's amazing what they can do. And I feel like I'm being totally ripped off just because I live in a different part of the country.
Definitely. And like, if you were even to get access to them here, like, would you trust getting a pessary off the black market? This is it. You might smoke it because at least you're burning it, and that's a form of sterilising this stuff that comes from the black market. But a pessary, like, you do that. That's where you need the GMP standards. This is where you need your pharmaceutical grade approach to ensure the sterility of products that you insert into your body, because you're bypassing defense mechanisms that are there to defend yourself. Like when you orally consume something, you have a lot of stomach acids and all of these kind of defense mechanisms. But like when you insert something there, like, you know, like any bacteria or anything, like, you know, you don't want that. Like,
exactly.
You know, urinary tract infections are not nice. Like, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, you know, so it wouldn't be good at all.
I'm bad enough. Like I had endometriosis on both USLs, the uterine sacral ligaments. So the ovary was fused, like stuck to my pelvic wall. I had it on my diaphragm. Like it had literally gone everywhere. So supposedly, every surgery I have, I increase my chances of adhesions.
Okay, yeah.
So if the cannabis is proven to shrink the endometrial lesions, is it going to shrink the adhesions as well? I'm more inclined to believe yes, it will, just because of all the research that's out there. But it pisses me off that just because I'm in a particular part of the world, I don't have the same access to adequate treatment or quality of life as others who are in my position and have my circumstances.
What really pisses me off in this instance is the lack of interest there from our the academic, I suppose, in Ireland. None of them are looking to get into like the population of patients that are out there. So for your condition, for all the other conditions, that cannabis is shown to be some way effective at either treating the symptoms or maybe even actually reversing the condition, such as you're saying there. Like, why isn't there? And a lot of the times because of the stigma, because of the prohibition. And this has always been the biggest barrier, that they getting access to patients. But we're always hearing, there's a lack of research there. And then we look at it like, well, all right, so there isn't enough research there. Like you could argue, say, like, because they're not actually getting out to patients. Why aren't they doing that? And it's a vicious cycle that's been going on for the last 50 years.
If they're going to claim, and that's the defence they're going to use, lack of research. Where's the research to support what you're saying? Yeah. That's my question. Like, where is the research to support that it's dangerous, that it's fucking reefer madness? Yeah. All this crazy stuff.
Or to support that it's not effective.
But well, we're going to touch back on, you had asked me earlier about how I had gotten on with the pain consultant here. So when I did finally get to see him after 4 years, they claimed they only had me on the list from the year prior. So do you ever just feel like everyone is trying to make a fool out of you? That's really how I felt with the whole hospital. But anyways, I brought in all my research from endometriosis specialists, world renowned in Australia, who had done stuff on cannabis. The Barcelona stuff hadn't come out at the time, which I feel may carry more weight now because it's in the EU, but that's debatable as well. But anyway, I brought in my research, and he took one look at the title and closed it and said, no, I work in line with, was it HPRA or EU, whatever, and I don't support prescribing cannabis to patients. And I said, but like the evidence is clearly here to support that it's going to help. And I said, look, he goes, well, why don't you move to Canada?
Come on, like you can't be saying that to people.
That's what he said to me. Why don't you move to Canada? And I said, well, first of all, because everything that I know and love is here. And second of all, how much of a hypocrite would I be going just to help myself? This is a right that should be, and everyone's entitled.
Yeah. All the girls that might follow you are the people that might develop this condition.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, no, I'm going to stand here and say, I want to hear. Why should I have to go halfway around the world? I already had to go halfway around the world for treatment. Yeah. That should have been available here if you actually gave two shits about us. I'm not going to do it again now for cannabis, like when everybody should be entitled to it. I'm sick of it. Yeah. So that's how I got on there. But since I have got in touch with Alicia Marr, and she gave me the name of her pain consultant, so I'm on his waiting list as of January this year. So I'm guessing it'll probably be June next year. Yeah, about 18 months. I'm hoping. Yeah, that's kind of the ballpark. If it's any longer than that, now I'll be raging. But I'm pretty sure that him and my GP will work towards getting the ministerial license. Yeah. But to be honest with you, I'm still not going to be able to afford $2,000 every 3 months for what's available through Badgercan. I'm going to be in the same position.
The chances are your reimbursement won't be covered, or you have to go through. I think it was a Deborah Downey, the mother of Abigail. She was a young child I think she's 16 now at the moment. Her child, but she suffered with seizures. But I think they were waiting nearly 18 months or more. I'm not even too sure if they've even gotten approval for reimbursement yet for the medicine for their daughter. I think Vera's got it covered. I'm not too sure about other patients. I know Kenny Tynan, they wouldn't cover his reimbursement either. I think, as he says it, they kept moving the goalposts for him, so to speak, and making it harder and harder for him to get it. And they just don't want people to be getting it for some reason. You wonder why.
I don't understand the level of inhumane. Like these,
there's
especially like Vera
compassion
and stuff, like they're fighting for their kids.
Yeah.
Like, it's bad enough caring for a child who is so vulnerable 24/7 without having the stress on top of it just to access adequate treatment for her. Like, I don't understand how the likes of Simon Harris was there for long enough. He could have, I know he was a blind boy actually commented on how the ministerial license came in by accident.
Yeah.
So, like, I know he did do that at the time, but they didn't do nearly enough, or not what they could have for those families. And it makes me sick to my stomach. Like, as bad as I feel so much worse for them.
Yeah.
My heart is more broken for those families now than myself.
Yeah. Well, I think the first ministerial licence, if I recall, went out to Tristan Ford, the young boy from West Cork. He's as well, another young boy who suffered with seizures. But did
he go to Colorado?
He had to go to Colorado, yes. Yeah. And they were over in Colorado in exile for, I think, a year almost, or maybe over a year,
yes.
just a little over a year. And a remarkable turnaround he made while over there getting access to this medicine. But again, you have to wonder, like, why is it that a person has to get on a plane to go to some other thing? Like, what's this imaginary border that exists that cannabis is okay over there and it's not here? It's like, why are we not good enough to work with, like, a plant that grows from the earth and produces fucking very amazing, like, more valuable than the oil that comes from the bloody the Iraq and places like that. Yeah. Like, if I was to put a value on it, I think it's way more valuable than that. Yeah. When you look at what it potentially has.
Like, and,
yeah.
And it's laughable, like, that the latest polls are showing that Ireland has the highest rate of cannabis consumers in the EU.
Yeah, yeah.
And still, the politicians have their head in the sand. It's so frustrating that advocates are, like, really, really, really pissed off at this.
Yeah. Well, we've been told it's a non-issue for too long. Like, even when election time rolls around, we're made feel like second-class citizens asking about, like, an issue that's important to us. Like, I can remember during the last election, it was all about, like, homelessness. It was about, there was a couple of things going on there, like, around the hospitals and stuff like that. But, like, for any of the politicians, it was like drugs was very low down the list. So that for me, it was just like, right, I'm going to run and make this an issue. Then I'm going to bring this as a major issue to be dealt with, because it's something we can sort out now. Yeah. They're talking about homelessness. They're talking about hospitals. These are, like, very complex things that are going to take a bit of time to sort out. Yeah. The decriminalisation of the drug user is something that could happen with a bit of pen and paper overnight.
Exactly, overnight. Yeah.
And then what that would do in turn, like, for even people like yourself, the decriminalisation of the drug user effectively, like, well, it would be great for drug users per se, like, but for researchers to do research then to work with patients like yourself, this would be a major barrier removed.
Exactly. And the amount of interest that is there, but they won't express it because of the stigma. And then, like, as I was saying about the whole ministerial license, if I get that, it's not going to be much use to me in terms of source and product.
Yeah.
But what I'm more concerned about is being brought to court and losing my driving license. Like, I care for my mum and dad who are 75 and 78 this year.
Yeah.
Mum is in heart failure. She has she's diseases and conditions the length of my arm. She's hospital appointments left, right and centre. And I am the one that takes her to all of this. If I don't have the cannabis in my system to battle my own chronic conditions, I'm not in a position to bring her to our appointments. So the knock-on effect my driving, like, the possibility of losing my license would have is phenomenal.
Yeah, and we look at it over in the States right now, they're working out, like, how to differentiate between people who use it, say, recreationally, or people who use it medicinally. And what they're showing, like, is actually the level of impairment after use. it's negligent, really. Like, unless, like, you talked a while ago about those extracts, those dabs, unless you were to, like, take a serious amount of those things, and you'd, like, a very low tolerance as well,
yeah.
you know. Like, I suppose tolerance is the most important thing there to mention within all of this, like, that you can't, like,
Exactly.
if you're not tolerant to cannabis, you can definitely go into a kind of bit of a panic station at first.
But if you go into a panic station like that, you're not going to drive a car.
No,
that's the thing. Like, and I know, like, obviously my tolerance is extremely high.
But I think there'll be a difference there, though. Like, say, for myself, being when I was a first-time consumer, and yourself, say, maybe when you were a first-time consumer, it might be very different experiences. If you were experiencing chronic pain at the time and I wasn't, it'd be very less likely for you to actually have a panic freak out, because you're going to be more focused on, hey, where's my pain? Where's the pain gone? What the fuck happened there? Exactly. Whereas for me, I didn't have a pain to focus on. It's just more I'm focused on other things, like, and I could potentially. So again, perspective on, like, the individual. It's very important.
And I feel like we need to emphasize that so much more. The individualistic aspects of the whole of cannabis consumption. And, like, my issue is, we're not penalising every alcohol drinker because of the few drink drivers there is each year. So why are all cannabis users being penalised and punished because of a small proportion that misuse it, or like that it's habit forming and they get into these ruts? And, like, I feel, again, the whole addiction side of the things, it blurs the lines, because the drug itself is only the outlet. They never look at the reason why people are turning to using drugs and depending on them for whatever is going on in their lives. Do you know? And it really bothers me that we're all kind of bundled into this one same bracket, and it's so individualistic. And people have to take personal responsibility as well. Like, do you know what I mean? And I remember my sisters laughing at me a few years ago. We were in Manchester, and I have a lot of family that live over there. We go over a couple of times a year, which has been awful. We haven't been able to get over with COVID and stuff. But anyways, we were in Manchester and we were having a joint out the back. And she said something about someone who, he didn't work and all he done was smoke his dole money, like, and he didn't do. And I said, that's not on the weight. That's on him. And they were all looking at me, and I said, but it's true. If I can smoke and I can go to work every day and he can't, surely that's on him, and it's not on the weight. Like, you can't be blaming that. You have to blame the person. There has to be a level of personal responsibility, in my opinion. I
would agree with that as well. It's definitely down to the individual and where they've come from in life and what values have been put into that person as well. Definitely, there's a lot of that to be said. Like,
this is the thing with me, right? I was told, and I was bet into my head from the time I was a baby, if you do drugs, you die. If you do drugs, you're going to die. And as I kind of came, like, 10, 11, 12, there was so many kind of around the estate that ended up overdosing or got a bad batch of A's, or, you know, never came back from it. So what I was seeing around me was reinforcing what these people were telling me. And then I'll never forget, God be good to her, my best friend Tracy, she robbed half a joint on our brother when I think we were only 11. And I only literally had 2 little blows, gave it, and cried my eyes out. I'm going to die. I'm after doing drugs. I'm going to die. That was the level of conditioning and the prohibitionist mindset that I had at that age. Now, obviously, 4 years later, everything changed, and I started out with hash, and I didn't like weed, believe it or not. I didn't like the flower. I didn't like the price of it, first of all, but I wasn't really gone on the smell or the taste either. I was a real kind of hash queen, but I don't know, obviously that changed, and I opened my soul and I realised the goodness, and I've kind of smoked weed probably since about 18, I'd say.
Well, the quality has definitely improved over the last couple of years here. I would go back maybe, if I went back maybe 10 or 15 years ago, it was 15 when I kind of was convinced by my cousins to try a bit of hash, like, and it was about maybe a good 5 to 7, about 5 years later, I suppose, before weed actually started getting good. Was it about, maybe there about three or 4 years after that anyway, weed started getting good. So I started about 10 or 12 years ago. So,
but like, even that, I'm thinking 10 years ago, I was 19, like, even the stuff then, half of it was sprayed. You didn't know what you were getting. You know what I mean? Some of it would give you a headache, and it's just, it goes to show again, like, just the bullshit with the irregular market, with the black market, you know.
Well,
we need it regulated.
I had a good source back then, and the sprayed weed wasn't as much of a problem initially, but once that became a problem, then like that was so messed up, because that was why weed became a good thing. Hash wasn't reliable anymore. I don't know if you can recall, like when hash went to like that diesely tainted stuff, like that nasty chemical ridden.
You could even smell the diesel off
like,
it.
oh yeah. Oh, it was rotten. And then you went to the weed, and the weed was great for however long, and then all of a sudden, man, these scumbags come along and they start spraying it with fiberglass and all that. Like, you remember the long ash weed, like when you'd smoke a joint and the ashes would just, they wouldn't break at all. Like, they would literally be formed in plastic. Like that. What do you ingest? What's going into our lungs?
I know.
Like, you know?
No, it's a wonder we're still here.
Yeah. That's it. Like, but it was when I got an ounce off someone, and it was sprayed with stuff, and I'll never forget. I was just so pissed off. I went back to the person. I wasn't able to get my money back, and I can remember just thinking, I was sitting in my car up outside this person's house, and I was going to go in and I was going to cause trouble. I was going to cause trouble, and I was just like, you know what? Take this as a lesson now, like that. This isn't where you want to be messing around with, like that. You have to, like, this isn't. It's not his fault either, like that. He's
after getting in this bad shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know. So I just said, you know what, fuck it. I left it off. Yeah, and because you only end up in more trouble.
This is it.
I was watching later on that evening. I was watching a documentary by Rick Simpsons. And I never forget it, like I was just sitting there looking at this fucking shitty sprayed weed that I had, like that I didn't even want to smoke, and I was tempted to even sell it on to people, and I'm just like, you're not going to do that to people.
Someone
like
else, I know, it's hardship.
That's it, like, because people ask it was that the hard ash stuff, like, and some people would still actually even buy it and smoke it. Some people actually would, like, you know, they'll ask you for the discount or something, like, because they don't know any better. But yeah, it was crazy. I was watching that Rick Simpson documentary, and he was growing the plants, extracting from it, making the oil and giving it to the patients who are using it on their cancer, and they were having fucking great benefits. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. So for me, then the gloves were off. I was just like, I'm fighting for this, because this is a plant that has medicinal properties. Not long after that, then maybe 2 or 3 years later, I went away and I got my honours degree in herbal science. Like, so
play.
Rick Simpson set my pathway out for me.
Fair play. No, like I never hid my cannabis use as such, but I wasn't very vocal about it. Like, because to be honest, I didn't know that there were advocacy groups. I didn't know that there was clubs and communities, and I suppose social media has been good in that sense in connecting people that way. Like, I think it was Teresa put me in touch with the Cannabis Activist Alliance.
Yeah, I
didn't know any of you before that, so you know, it's just. Now I'm able to actually get involved, but I'm still terrified that the more I speak out, the more of a target I'm putting on my back. And I'm living at home with my mum and dad. As I said, she's in heart failure, and I've no doubt that she'd have a heart attack if they were to kick the door in and offend the police. Do you know what I mean? And it just puts me in such a fucking shitty position. I'm morally, internally conflicted, because I know what's right, and I know if I keep pushing it, something's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be the case. Like,
no, you know,
that's undermining our democracy when it's when the authorities, I suppose, that are there to protect us are actually acting like a deterrent from you speaking out and engaging with what you should be able to do in a democracy. Just fucking speak out freely, without fear of being attacked afterwards, like, and not just attacked, but attacked by the authorities, like in the most vicious way, in a way in which you're not even allowed to defend yourself. You know, if a guy comes in your door with a mask on and stuff, like, you know, at least you can pick up a baseball bat and take a few swings. That's scumbag. But when these gangsters come in and they're wearing the blue uniform and they're there as gardai, like, and they're literally kicking in your door and pointing guns at the face of your family and things, like, depending on the level of threat you might pose as a cannabis consumer, like, you just don't know, like, but you can't even defend yourself against them. Then it's so messed up.
I remember I was about maybe 15 or 16, and the boyfriend that I had at the time, his friend, or was it his brother-in-law or whatever, got raided, and we had stayed in the house the night before, so we were there when this happened. And I was like, I never experienced something like that before, and it did give me a fright. And they made us all sit in the kitchen while they searched the whole house, and of course my fucking condition started flaring up because stress makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to run into the toilet and I was getting sick. And while I'm saying this, infertility is one of the kind of worst symptoms and kind of worst side effects of endometriosis.
Yeah.
So at this point, like, I didn't know if I was going to have kids or not. I didn't even know if I had endo or not, but
Yeah.
I knew there was something wrong. I knew I had precancerous cells.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure what my path was where motherhood was concerned.
Yeah.
And because I was in getting sick in the toilet, the guard thought it'd be nothing funnier than to slag the boyfriend at the time, saying, oh, that she was up the pole, she's up the duff, she's this, that and the other. Thought it was hilarious, like,
Jeez, like.
terrifying a young girl to the point she was getting sick.
Yeah.
And then make a big joke about it, about something that she doesn't even know might be a possibility for her in the long run. Do you know, I've had so many awful experiences with cards that I find it very, very hard not to paint them all with the one brush.
Yeah.
And I know, like, logically and rationally, I know they're not all the same. They are only people. And, you know, some of them are genuine. But when that fear, that it's PTSD, like, when that takes hold, I'm frozen. Like, it's just, the threat I feel around Gardai is awful.
Yeah.
It's worse than any other panic that I can feel about anything.
And mainly because of the cannabis.
Because,
Yeah,
that's
the only thing. Like,
the only reason.
Yeah.
So if that element was removed, I'd be the happiest camper on the island.
Yeah.
I really would. Like, I
Yeah.
feel so much more relaxed.
Yeah, because of all the things. Like, and I suppose when I say mainly because of the cannabis, but I was referring also to the driving, but that's too because of the cannabis.
Well, this
exactly.
is it.
Like,
The
yeah.
thing is, if I wasn't smoking, or if I didn't have
Yeah.
cannabis to consume, I wouldn't be able to drive. My back would be so bad, the sciatic nerve, my leg would be kicking out. Like, I physically can't drive
Yeah.
without managing me shit with cannabis.
Yeah.
So, and not to mention, like, I have been smoking longer than I've been driving.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like I'm falling asleep behind the wheel, or it's not like that whatsoever.
Yeah, there's a huge misconception out there as to the effects of cannabis that it has on the individual. Again, like, people have a serious misconception as to the effects, thinking you're all spaced out or something like that, like seeing things that aren't there, like that. That's not.
It's like, I wish, I wish the strain was that good.
Yeah, well, if you wanted to experience that, there's other things, mushrooms there and stuff for that.
Well,
but
this is the thing. Never in my life have I ever done coke, nothing ever.
Oh, yeah.
Only smoked cannabis. And the only thing I said I'd be tempted to try would be the likes of mushrooms or DMT or something psychedelic like that.
Yeah.
And do you know, I was only watching on BBC Two a documentary. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it properly. What are they treating depression with?
psilocybin.
That's the one. Couldn't.
Yeah, that was the
get
one
the
that was
word
on
right.
the other night. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. They were treating the patients in the UK. It was a trial thing, and then the other half had escitalopram, the antidepressant.
Okay. Yeah.
It's actually probably the most prescribed antidepressant, and they were looking at the differences in the two kind of patient groups, and it was just incredible. Like, the people who tried the
psilocybin.
psilocybin, and you'll have to say it about 10 more times before it goes in. Like, the long lasting effects they had with the likes of depression and stuff was unreal, and their suicidal tendencies dropped far more significantly. I think on the escitalopram they actually went up in some cases.
Yeah, it's like a side effect of the drug.
What? You're like, I'm already depressed, and you're giving me something with a side effect that's gonna make me more depressed.
Yeah.
Makes no sense to me. But through this trial, I thought it was really good the way they had it. Like, I'd be afraid to just take it and go and sit in the field. Like, the way they done it was in a controlled environment. They had 2 trained therapists who guided you through the experience, as you know, and that's something that I would really like to try, just on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just to experience that kind of psychedelic, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's not too long more, and mushroom season will be upon us. So,
have you got 2 trained therapists on hand though?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. You see, that is the important thing when using these psychedelics in that kind of sense. When you want to use them therapeutically, it is important, I suppose, to have trained professionals there on hand. But that's not to underestimate or to take away the power of the individual, because that's how these things have been used, I suppose, for thousands of years, like where people would take them either as part of a ceremony or else as
ritualistic or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or as just as one's individual thing. Oh, yeah, go and spark away up. Yeah, I might pack up a ball myself. But have you ever looked into the use of psychedelics really on the therapeutic level? Because you were talking a while ago because of the issues around your pain and stuff like that. That there is, I suppose sometimes when people can suffer with these chronic conditions, that they can have, I don't know, would you say, kind of just some mental health issues, I suppose, because of that, like, you know, because the feeling is like, why is this happening to me, I suppose, really, like, you know, you feel like you're being punished for something, you know what I mean? If you're into some form of existential existence, like, you know, God and the heavens and all this kind of stuff like that, you feel like you're being punished for something. Some people can carry this kind of a feeling, you know, and psychedelics can. I
can relate to that, like, and I know, as I said, I deal with a lot of women on a daily, weekly basis, and like the self-hatred, the self-loathing, it goes really, really deep. And I suppose I am one of those people who believe in, not God or religion as such, but the universe and karma, and you know, I firmly believe in that stuff.
It sounds like psychedelics are definitely for you. So
I all the trauma and all the fucking therapy over the years, I got to a point where I felt like when I discovered Instagram, I wasn't on it like when everyone else was on it. It was a February 2019 I created my page specifically about endo. I had no idea the amount. It's endo with Aimee.
Endo with Aimee,
_blog. I had no idea the amount of others that were suffering at this time. Like, so to have that connection with others, I genuinely got to a point where I felt mentally, emotionally, psychologically, this was my calling. I was given this pain for a reason, and it was to march into Leinster House, to make them do something, to raise awareness, to, you know, like, it took me to a higher level. Nearly of self-actualization, like, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
You feel like that kind of, this condition happened, like you've a calling from it, I suppose. You were saying there to go into the Leinster House. I suppose that in a sense is something I would feel from the struggles I've had, the experiences I've had in my life, like that. That there's definitely a call in there, like that you have to stand up and fight for, you know, because like for me it's not even about me, you know. I could have went
social injustice.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and if you don't do something about it, this is going to remain, and it's going to affect other people who follow you. So I definitely do think there's a similarity there, and it's just funny, like, then that it's cannabis, then that both of us kind of have this thing around. Well, for you it's endometriosis, but
to be honest, it's more cannabis than it is endometriosis now at this point, because cannabis is the treatment for endometriosis. In my view, it is the one thing with the least side effects that is most effective. And I'm like, even if it's not, so what? Like, what is wrong with somebody wanting to have a joint in the evenings? Anyway, someone that has coffee, like, I don't like tea or coffee. And when I say I don't drink tea or coffee, people look at me like
you two heads,
and it's actually, they look at me probably more weirdly because of that than when I say I use cannabis or I consume cannabis. Do you know? So, and
is that because of a taste preference, or is that an irritant because of diuretic effects? Like,
no, the smell of coffee just
the
makes
smell,
me want to gag. And then tea, I just don't like the feeling it leaves on my teeth.
Fair enough. Kind of a weird clingy feeling or something.
Like they're stained or something. I don't know. It just makes, like, there's a coat or something on them. I don't know.
So it's just personal preference there anyway.
But and I'm like, the people look at me like, that's so strange, because the societal norms, we need to bust open these societal norms. And like that, we have, like, as a country, we've made serious progress in recent years with the likes of the gay marriage, the abortion, things like that. The momentum is there, and I think the people just need to be reminded that they are actually in charge. And they do dictate what policies should be in place.
Definitely.
The amount of people being affected by prohibition sickens me.
It's huge.
And what sickens me even more is the socio-economic disparity in the people who are suffering. That really gets me go, and that's what drove me to doing psychology and social studies when I came back from Romania, and I actually had a bit of a life and some kind of control over me pain. I went back to college and done a level 5 in applied psychology and social studies. So I just finished that up a few weeks ago, and I'm hoping to do social policy now in UL next year, the level 8 bachelor's.
Yeah.
So that, again, that's what's driving me, is the injustices in the communities, like, you know, it pisses me off.
Oh, big time, yeah. And I suppose if you go to the UL, then you'll be hoping that you'll be able to get a consistent supply of cannabis, because I'd imagine if you have a flare-up, that sitting down in a classroom is probably not a place you'll want to be.
Exactly.
So again, there's still barriers to be overcome, because you know, if you were on campus and you're medicating, the next and then just thinking of UL, I think they have their own like campus security and stuff. You know,
yeah.
like as a patient, like, you know,
Where
you
does
have to
that
go and
leave
you have to
me?
leave campus to medicate. Like,
Yeah.
that's so messed up. And I think you mentioned Alicia Maher earlier there. That was her was alma mater or something. I think she graduated from there. She's going to graduate from there. But she was studying up there as well. But they were supportive of her, at least within that department that she was in at the time. So I wonder again when and if you go and take up your academic career up there, like, you know, going on with it, like, how it plays out. Like,
I've incorporated it already so much in my level 5. Like, I had to do a project for young people in society, and it also crossed over into social studies. So it was 2 modules but the same project, and we had to do it on discrimination. So we had to pick a topic, and of course I picked the topic that nobody had ever done before: the discrimination as a direct effect of prohibition. And the tutors were fascinated by what I came up with, like with the report in the end. So even through me work, I've been incorporating cannabis anywhere I can.
Yeah.
Getting the conversation going, opening the conversation.
Can you recall any of the that report that you put out? Sorry for putting you on the spot now for that one. Can you?
Yeah, like I done an interview with Jared Rowe for it.
You've
had on before.
Yeah, I've had, yeah.
I put out a survey that got 300 responses.
Oh, nice.
I think it blew up on Twitter, I think.
Excellent, yeah.
So it was like everything was in the high 80 and 90 percentile for legalisation out of the 300 responses that I got. But I suppose one of the scariest things that I came across was a citywide drugs report on, I think it was around Tala or City West in Dublin. And the biggest obstacle in people reporting drug-related crime or intimidation from gangs was fear of what they were going to do to them.
Okay,
if they thought they were talking to the police.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for the mothers in the community was the fear of going to the post office every Wednesday or Friday to collect their money, because the gangs would be sitting outside waiting on them to come out for the kids' deaths.
Yeah. That
shook me to the core.
And that's something that's not talked about enough, really.
No.
Like, you know, we hear about it, all right, drug debt-related intimidation that they talk about. But really, like, when it's like, and I think it's something came up in the media maybe once or twice in the last few months. But it's not like this is a daily kind of a thing that goes on out there, like where young people are getting into crazy debt because of their drug use, and it's these ruthless gangs. And then target the family. Like, it's no longer the young fella like involved, like, or the young one. Like,
I just pictured my mum walking out of the post office and someone trying to intimidate her.
Yeah.
And I tears in my eyes reading the report.
And it's
I
not even
thought to put myself in that position. That is horrific. Like.
Yeah, but you've these little criminals down sitting outside waiting for, say, Mary or whatever to come down to collect the debt there from her son, like. But they're watching maybe pensioners come in too, like, you know what I mean? You wonder, like, what other temptations are there then, like, when they're being drawn to that place just because, again, this silly prohibition that's in place.
Yeah.
You don't have people there from Galvin's off licence or the Donovan's off licence down sitting at the post office waiting for somebody to come down and collect their drug that, you know, because of the alcohol, which is a drug, like, you know.
No,
that
but
doesn't
because
go
it's
on.
bought on a regulated premises, that doesn't go on.
Which proves regulation works. Really.
Exactly, 100%. And like, it frustrates me even more because I look at where I grew up. Like, I was born in St. Mark's in Clondalkin, in Dublin. Now I live in Rossgrey now, and like, even the cultural difference there was a shock when I moved. Like, I was only, I think, 14 when Mum and Dad moved. But now when I'm up in Dublin and I see why they took me out of it. I see why they wanted me gone from the estate we lived in. But like, me poor nephews, Yeah, one of them is he smokes his few joints and he does his few lines or whatever the weekend. That's his own business. But the guards know that. So they target him every time he leaves the house. Then I have another nephew, my brother's son, not into anything. Never in trouble a day in his life. And he can't even drive to the garage. And he's tore out of the car and the car is searched. And for what? Like, for nothing. So I feel like eliminating prohibition will also give these kids a sense of fucking self-respect back again. They have no rights when they're standing on the side of the road and a copper decides to search them there and then in front of everybody. It happened to me. They tore my car apart. There was nothing even in my car. Yeah. And I told them there was nothing in my car. I said, if there was, I'd have told you to avoid this. Look, you're making a show of me, like. Yeah. It was right on a busy roundabout on the Fonthill Road. Like, I was holding up traffic, blocking people. All because I drove off a certain road in DSD. And then he had the neck to tell me, because I told him I lived in Roscrea, he had the neck to say to me, well, maybe you don't know what it's like being around here. Oh, was it that road is like used by drug dealers, is it? Or there's a drug dealer up there or something? There's a drug dealer on that road. Yeah, they used the same excuse to search my car where they found me with the €10 joint. That I was parked outside a drug dealer's house, apparently. They didn't tell me that at the time, but that was a reason why they searched me. I found out afterwards, like or whatever. Well, yeah, in when I went up into the court, it was that the area is known for drug dealing. That they didn't mention that you're outside the drug dealer's house, but that's what they're saying. Like, the area is known for drug dealing. I found out I was outside a drug dealer's house afterwards from another local over there. Do drug dealers not eat takeaway too? Yeah, are you not allowed to deliver it to them because they're drug dealers? That's it. Get a grip. They can't go in and get the drug dealers that they're really looking for, so they're penalising people for €10 worth on the street. Yeah. It's laughable. They're actually making a show of themselves. Oh, big time, it's absolutely laughable. Like. The more recent case with the guy who had osteoporosis and also suffered with a heroin addiction, and he got caught with the €4 worth of cannabis. Like, that they're really swinging low these days. Like, that they've no shame really in how low they swing. How much would it have cost for him to get free legal aid, for them to bring in a prosecutor on the day, for the guard that was there? Like, thousands, I'd say. It makes no sense. And every night I pray to the universe to just make it make sense. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. That's it, like, You wonder how much money's been wasted every day by our guards in this country, and what research we could be doing with that same amount of money. Same money. Yeah, quite often. And quite often into the substance they're taking, you know. Like, I don't know, like, what are your views on just say that the decriminalisation of the drug user? Like, would that be something you would agree with, just the wider decriminalisation of the drug user? Yeah, 100%. I don't feel like people should be criminalised for using drugs. Yeah, I don't. And it's a complete people say, oh well, he attacked this person in a drug-induced state, or he robbed this shop in a drug-induced state, and I'm like, okay, maybe he was on drugs. Yeah. Something clearly was going on in that man's life or mind beforehand for him to be reduced to that. But people go out and steal and murder and stuff. Well, not murder, sorry. No substance. Well, no substance, but not even that. But because they're driven by, say, hunger, because they're poor. So do we put a prohibition on poverty? Like, do we go and fine our government for every poor person in the country, like, to make sure our like, you know? If only. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. We'd be a much better off society if we did. but really, like, that's kind of what they're doing quite often, or not. They're punishing people for, like, when you look at as you say, the people who get punished, the socioeconomic disparity that's there within the way in which people are punished. They target people there, like, for being from this area. Why are you from this area? Well, my mum and dad actually, they're on social housing, and this is the area you get the social housing. This is where I was born. This is exactly, like, this. But because that was my own experience, and I suppose also my uncle was a drug dealer, and I was with my cousin, so the guards kind of were targeting us to get at my uncle. And, like, we were fucking 16, 17 at the time, like, when they were doing, well, no, this was going on. I luckily didn't experience as much as what my cousin did. He's not around now, unfortunately, to talk about these kind of things like that he experienced at the time. But it's incredibly unfair, like, and it's unethical, I believe, the way in which the Gardaí operate. Like, they target young people in order, like, in that situation, they were targeting my cousin to get at his dad. Because his dad was selling hash,
Like, in fairness, like, you know, selling hash, all right, crime of the century.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, but the damage
waste
they
of
done,
resources and the
the damage done, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I know Jared Rose speaks a lot about that, the damage that he's seen in families over all the years that he's been a youth worker, and it is pure prohibition that's causing the damage.
Yeah, big time, yeah.
You know, the ramifications of that is just, it's really sad. Like, it's really, really, really sad. I watched a documentary on Sheriff Street in Dublin in the 60s. I only watched it the other week. I actually think I shared it on Facebook. But what rattled me the most was that so little had changed back then compared to now in terms of the poverty and social poverty. It just, I don't get it. Like, the class conflict just bothers me.
Well, I think like for too long, I suppose a lot of the issues around socioeconomic problems get blamed on other things. You know, it's well, they're poor because they use drugs. Well, we make using drugs more illegal. We put more harsher punishments there. We'll deter people from using drugs rather than actually help people to be less poor. So maybe they've been less of an inclination. And not just to like, you don't want to deter people to use drugs. It's to deter people from abusing drugs, which is something that manifests itself in the space when, like, you've got no other outlet, like, especially if you're young people and the services go underfunded, so therefore there's no fucking football camp this year, like, you know what I mean? There's no youth club or something like that.
Yeah, and
like,
mental health services, forget it.
Yeah, I mean, geez, I won't even go there. Like, yeah,
it's the truth though, yeah, and especially for younger people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I really think, like, I actually had to put on my application for UL what area would I most be interested in working in, and I did say like teenagers, adolescents, because I feel like they've been most forgotten throughout the whole pandemic and stuff.
Oh, big time, yeah.
And I feel like that it's so easy to label them and put them in a box, and for them to internalize that identity and not realize their potential. You know, and I see it happening every day. I see it with my own family. Like, you know, it bothers me no end that people just need more self-belief, and the environment around them tells that they're not giving a fuck about.
Yeah,
the government don't care about you.
Yeah, so
the labour doesn't. The job seekers doesn't care about you. You have to prove this, that, and the other, bend over backwards to get help, because you can't get a job because you need experience, but you can't get experience because you don't have a job.
Yeah,
it's like, it's never ending. As someone who done the job bridge scheme / extortion
Scams
scheme,
bridge,
Scams bridge, like 10 months working, was it 9 to 5 or half 8 to 5 for an extra 50 or for 150 a week?
Stop, like,
that is extortion.
Yeah.
And then
modern day
I give
slavery.
it a better one. When I finally got out, they actually got rid of me after about 2 months. But I'm not surprised, because I was so ill at that time that I did miss a lot of time and everything. But they could have just changed that description, excuse me, and took on someone else.
Yeah.
But I finally got another job my own self in the call centre in Dublin City. And that employer asked me, was I coming off social welfare? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, would you mind signing this form? So I signed the form, and I looked into it afterwards. That company got 10 grand for taking me off the live register. I took myself off the live register.
Where's your 10 grand? Yeah.
After working like a dog for
they could at least give me a half, like.
A year.
Yeah.
It just made no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah,
the government are looking after, like, the big fucking employers, but not the people that are actually struggling.
Yeah.
And I won't mind, before I even got on that job bridge scheme, I was doing knocking door to door, selling Sky Digital.
Oh, stop!
On 100% commission.
Oh, stop! That's another scam.
To go to all these places.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah.
It's mad.
Get yourself all dolled up, like, into the suit,
and
like, and yeah.
Knocking door to door and the lashings around.
I felt so sorry for people when they used to knock on my door trying to sell me stuff, and I'm just like, sorry, like, can I just tell you not to waste any more of your time and just go right now? It's like, how can you be nice? Like, when
I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to save you your spiel.
Yeah.
And look, you appreciate that more than getting halfway through and getting nowhere. So I respect that.
Yeah.
No, I did that. No, don't get me wrong. I met some amazing characters.
Oh, I'd say you do.
Knocking on the doors, like.
Yeah.
I mean, one week we were sent up to Donegal. We stayed up there for a week knocking doors, and it was only on the third or fourth day we found out that the place we were on was called Murder Mountain.
Oh, nice.
Like every second house in the estate was boarded up, burned out, but the crack we had, like, you know, just goes to show you don't judge a book by its cover, innit? But yeah, it was good crack.
Yeah, as we're getting, I suppose, near to the end of the conversation, I'd like to just ask, what's next in line for yourself? Like, is in Ireland, as we're coming out of this lockdown now, do you have any plans for upping the campaign and stuff? I know you've been involved with the Cannabis Activist Alliance and things like that. Is there anything there coming down the road?
Well, again, the fear of actually really being out in the heart of it because of the whole my mum being sick and my dad not being well and stuff. I'm afraid really to get out there. But if there is like events over the summer and stuff, I will show up. Like, I'll be happy.
Well, I'll be probably doing stuff down here. Well, I will be doing stuff down here in Cork, and hopefully the guys, the Major Smoke Up, will be doing something up in Dublin as well in July, I think. So
I heard something. Yeah.
Hopefully that they'll announce some plans there soon. So would you be attending that then? So
absolutely,
as well, yeah, that's 100%. The job.
That's in Phoenix Park usually.
That's where they done it last year. Anyway,
yeah, it's only up the road from my sister HQ. My dad calls it. When we moved from Dublin, my sisters became HQ. Yeah. So it's not too far from there. So yeah, I'll definitely be at that.
That's the job.
Hopefully have a trail behind me of other smokers as well. Hopefully. Yeah.
Well, and how long more do you feel yourself? Do you think that we are from seeing more effective access, say, for patients such as yourself? Like even outside of the adult use, or what they call recreational use, just yourself, like how long do you think it'll be before you see a doorway open up where you're actually going to get effective access to the medicine that gives you a quality of life that you've been talking about here now for the last little while?
Well, honestly, I'm not hopeful, like from a government perspective. From the cannabis community perspective, if you can get the social clubs up and running, then I'd be a lot more hopeful about that than I am about the government side of things. Now, having said that, I do think like that the latest poll from the journal is getting, like, the conversation is more out there. I only done a poll today on the journal actually about decriminalising all drug use, and yes, ran away with it. Like, I think there was 4 different. Can't remember what way it was broken down, but like, I think society is definitely changing, and I think that eventually the officials are going to have no choice but to listen. I know Tom Curran made the point yesterday. They done a webinar on the effects of prohibition for patients, and he was saying that one of the biggest obstacles for politicians used to be the fear of losing votes if they spoke about it, but now the way things are, like, they're going to lose votes if they don't speak about it. Yeah. So I can only hope that it's going to happen in the next 5 years. But until then, unfortunately, I'm going to have to rely on the black market. Or until we can get some sort of social clubs up and running. Please, God, we have a hell of a lot more of a chance of getting that done sooner than we do getting the actual policies changed.
And you would never risk growing your own at all?
Honestly, it wouldn't be for fear of the guards. It'd be for fear of, like, just making a mess of it. Like, I don't feel I have the intelligence required for it. Don't get me wrong, I'm very intelligent in many areas, but I don't have the same passion with growing as I do with smoking. So I'd prefer someone like who knows what they're doing to grow it for me, and then just let me smoke it.
What's your favourite vegetable?
Blue cheese.
Blue cheese.
Yeah.
That's a dairy product.
Oh no, sorry, you said vegetable. I heard strain.
Oh yeah, no, I thought you were messing with me.
Vegetable. I'm not really big on vegetables.
Oh, aren't you? No. Oh, fair enough. Yeah, no, I was going to say you can practice on some spinach seeds or something like.
Yeah, no, they'd die. It would, honestly, wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, well, growing's not for everybody. I always kind of say that if cannabis was to be legalised in the morning, I reckon there's going to be maybe 70-80% of the market wouldn't actually even grow. And I reckon as the market matures, that lumber would get less that would be grown, because you look at the beer, for example. How many people actually brew beer? for, do you know what percent of the amount of people who drink beer brew beer?
Yeah.
Like, it's minuscule. I wouldn't even think it would be at 1%. I'd say it would be like below 1%. I reckon that's kind of what would happen to cannabis over time. It's just initially, once it's legalized, I think there would be a lot of people would grow it. But over time, that number will be becoming less and less as the novelty wears off, really. Like,
yeah, now just because I personally don't want to grow doesn't mean that I don't believe people have the right. You know what I mean? Everybody should have the right to grow their own plants, like, definitely.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. That comes down to the individual. Not everybody wants to grow their own plants. Like, yeah.
I just want to smoke them.
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not very hopeful, as I said, with government, just because I think they're too far up their own asses at this point. It's like, even with my own family, like, I struggle sometimes, but I try to remember that it's like telling them that black is white after all these years and expecting them to get it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I do have some level of patience, but I think that's just because I have to.
Yeah.
If I didn't, I would completely blow me top.
And is there anybody out there in the political sphere, like in your area, in your constituency, that would be aware of your campaign, of your situation, and of what's going on, and supportive, I suppose, more importantly? Like, well, I'd imagine you would have reached out to them. You mentioned, was it Catherine Healy a while ago, was it? Or
no, Lisa Chambers.
Oh, Lisa Chambers, is that?
Yeah, that was on the endometriosis side of things.
Yeah.
We've met a couple of times. To be honest,
she's independent, or?
Nah, she's Fianna Fáil.
Fianna Fáil, okay.
Yeah, she's a senator, I think. Now, to be fair, she is after getting a bit done for the endometriosis. But I never felt like the cannabis was a priority for her, and all I wanted her to do was have a conversation with other people in our party. That's all I wanted her to do.
And you approached her and just tried to have a conversation with her about it, like.
Oh yeah, we had Zoom meetings like a couple every 6 weeks or so for a while.
Do you feel she took you serious in that at all? Like,
no,
not really.
I feel like she appeased me at the time.
Yeah,
but I don't feel like she did anything afterwards or outside of our conversations.
Yeah,
because what upset me the most was how I brought it up was about Gino's upcoming bill, the Cannabis Control and Regulation Bill.
Yeah.
She said, "Well, it's the party that it's coming from." And I said, hang on a minute, that is the first problem with politics. It doesn't matter what party it's coming from. If it's going to help the people and if it's going to benefit the nation, it shouldn't matter what party it's coming from. Yeah. That's what it should be about.
Yeah.
Like, that really bothered me. So I said, look, don't talk about the bill then. If you feel like that's going to put your party members off, don't talk about the bill. Talk about cannabis consumption.
Yeah. About the need for it. Like,
regulate the conversation, normalise the conversation.
Yeah.
That's all I want you to do. But as I said, I don't feel like I got very far. Now, I had, what's his name in Tipperary? A few of them mentioned me name in the Oireachtas when they were debating the whole endometriosis thing and putting questions to the minister. I think it was Simon Harris at the time.
Right.
Can't think of his name off the top of my head now, but I know we didn't mention the cannabis at the time.
Yeah.
Could be different now, 2 years on. There's a lot more in the media about it. There's a lot more conversation. Maybe now he'd be more willing. I know on East Coast FM, Declan Meany, I think is it. He had me on, and he was quite happy to have the conversation.
Excellent, yeah.
So that was good. Like, others kind of panic and cut me off before I get a chance to say much.
And with the last election that rolled around there, that was in 2020. Like, I almost got burnt. But yeah, the last election, did you get any people like knocking at your door, looking for your vote? And did you get to put the question to them at all around cannabis and patients and stuff?
It was Alan Kelly.
Alan Kelly, yeah.
Knocked on my door, and I was actually the picture of endometriosis.
Okay,
opening the door to state me with the hot water bottle, and I was bent over and this, that and the other. Now, to be honest, I didn't get into much of a conversation with him.
Yeah.
But I let him know that endometriosis wasn't my priority. I think that was before I went to surgery. So I don't even think I was focused much on cannabis at that point. It was just, I'm dying inside and I need help.
Of course.
But now, Jesus, I chew the ear off any of them a bit when it comes to cannabis.
And I think there's something you just said there, like that's important. Like, again, just to remind people out there, like especially the fit and able people within the cannabis community. You know, there's this kind of attitude for some people to kind of sit back and focus all on the patients and things like that, which I think is wrong a lot, because as you just said, like you're thinking you're going to die, you know what I mean? You're in so much pain, you're going in for surgeries and shit like that. You should be focusing on you and getting better. You shouldn't have to be focusing on a campaign. And that's kind of why I would be pleading to people out there who are fit, able and healthy, like the fight like
Take
fucking twice as hard, like, you know, like don't fight just for yourself, like, but fight for another individual, you know what I mean? Fight for two people, like, because there's many patients out there who can't get outside the door, like, just you know, not even because of the fear and stuff, because their condition just really has them in such a bad state, like, whether it be physically or mentally, like, you know, but in both ways you're locked in there. Like,
I was gonna say that, like, this disease has taken everything from me over the years. Now I'm in a really good place now, thank God, but that was a lot of work. I had to do, like, self-development, working on me triggers, managing expectations, not catastrophizing based on previous experiences, and, like, there's a lot of work that goes into actually maintaining some kind of well-being. And if cannabis really aids with that, who am I hurting? Like, what is the problem? You know, and that doesn't necessarily just go for people in chronic pain. That just goes for people who may be a bit anxious and stuff. But like that, I lost everything we'd have plans for months, and then the day would come and I wouldn't be able to leave my bed. And I was letting people down all the time. My friends got pissed off, like, you never go anywhere anymore. We always ask you never do it, and they stop asking you. You know, you get sick of hearing yourself complaining over and over. It's really, really hard work. It's exhausting. So what if I'm gonna have a few joints? Like, I'm not hurting at anybody.
Definitely.
In fact, I'm benefiting those around me, because I'm a more pleasurable person to be around. Like, I was a shadow in myself. I had no sense of humour. I didn't know how to smile or laugh anymore. I didn't know anything other than excruciating pain and darkness. And I'm so grateful, like, that I made it through it, because there were so many times that I was really on the edge, like. And that's another thing that I need to give a kind of highlight as well. The amount of girls with endometriosis that have accidentally overdosed, just trying to take the edge off the pain. Like, they didn't intend to commit suicide or take their life. They were just trying to get rid of some level of pain and accidentally overdosed.
It's just very common occurrence, like the amount of people who die from taking the amount of pills like taken and are stated on the box, like following the instructions of the box. Accidental overdoses, it's a common enough occurrence. It's not with cannabis.
No, exactly. Not never in the history of anything ever has anyone overdosed of cannabis. But, like, I mentioned earlier that at one stage it was 450 milligrams of plexi a day that I was prescribed. I never took near the amount of that. I think the max I took in one day was probably 150, and it killed me.
And how much is in a tablet, like?
50 milligrams.
50 milligrams per tablet. So she wanted to take, like, nearly 9 tablets a day. So all at once or over the course of the day?
No, over the course of the day. But at that time it was a total of 27, I think. So there was plexi, there was anti-inflammatories, there was paracetamol, there was the pill, there was buscopan, there was a stomach tablet to offset the damage from every.
Fucking hell.
It was nearly 30 tablets a day. And I have such a psychological issue with taking tablets. Like, even now, the ones I know I'm supposed to take, it kills me. I hate taking them. I will put up with a headache for days before I'll take even a paracetamol. I hate taking tablets. And a lot of that comes from the stigma with doctors. I met a brand new GP for the first time. I was in a state going into her, like, really bad pain, but also really vulnerable. And I told her that I went to counselling for 3 weeks before I had the courage to make the appointment to see her, because of the medical trauma I'd experienced over the years. And she never, I've never experienced someone so cold in my life. She snapped when she seen me previous Plexia prescription. Do you realise this is an end-of-life drug? And I was pure taken aback, and I said, do you realise I didn't put myself on that? I didn't prescribe that for myself. Like, surely if you have an issue with the medication I'm on, you should be taking it up with who prescribed it, and not taking it out with me.
Not even the person who took it up with the health professional board.
She had a problem with epilepsy, but then when she seen the cannabis research, she slammed the book closed and said nobody be getting any benzos or sleepers around here. And I went into pure shock. I said, excuse me, I've never been on benzos or sleepers ever in my life. How dare you jump to that conclusion? Where did that come from? She told me I'd highly insulted her and that she'd never see me again. And I had been assigned to her by the HSE. Her name was on my medical card. Yeah. This happened last August, I think it was. I was last March.
And how long were you waiting to see her?
Because I'd moved from Dublin, I couldn't keep going to that GP. Yeah. Couldn't find one myself, so the HSE had assigned me to her. Maybe 3 weeks before I actually got the courage to go see her. Yeah. And then she told me she'd never see me again. Yeah. So for the next few months, I had to see a different doctor in the same practice. And out of the blue, in October last year, I got a letter that she had written to the panel to have me removed immediately as a patient, and that I had 2 weeks to find a new doctor. Why was this? Just because? Apparently, I found out because they assigned me to her, she had to keep me for 6 months. Okay. As soon as the 6 months was up, she wrote to them to remove me immediately. And you know what? It was a blessing that she did, because I'm after getting this other doctor who is incredible. Okay, excellent. I adore and respect everything about him. Yeah. He really is brilliant. So it was a blessing in disguise, but I had to go through so much to actually get to that point. And this all happened last year, and it only dawned on me a few months ago. I think she was the same doctor that the guards called into the station the day they arrested me over a failed drug. You know, the drug swab thing? Yeah. They said I failed on cannabis. They brought me in to do a blood test. I think it was her. Okay, yeah. That came in. And if that is the case, at least it makes some kind of sense. Mm-hmm. You know, she had it. Obviously, she was rattling walking into a guard station just thinking this is a criminal. Yeah. Didn't give a shit about me mental state, me conditions or anything like that. Yeah. You know, her mindset was I was a criminal and that was that. So if it is her, that would make sense that she had that reaction when I seen her as a patient. But I didn't put that together at the time. So to me, it made no sense. Mm-hmm. But how did that drug test go afterwards? Did the blood one come back? Yeah, it came back about 6 weeks later, May 2019. Came back drug in system, and it's like cannabinoid class. Didn't say percentage, this, that, nothing. No. Just cannabinoid class. Yeah. And that was it. I haven't heard that since. Okay, but they moved address. Yeah, they know where I live. So. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, but they took a blood sample, alright, from you, did they? Yeah, they did. Yeah, and you didn't get the analysis back from that one with the nanograms per milliliter of blood. No, yeah. No, all I got was one piece of. Actually, I got two pieces of paper. Yeah. The first one was alcohol. Don't know why they. According to your man, the guard, the swab was benzos, cocaine, cannabis, and opioids. Yeah. And I should have failed on opioids because of my prescription at the time, but I didn't. Okay, yeah. So that to me was, you just knew my history about cannabis, and he tried to tell me it was random. There was nothing random about it. He taken me license, gone off for 10 minutes, come back, and another car arrived on site with the test. Yeah, did you get caught with cannabis before, or? No, they just knew that I was smoking. I never hid it. Yeah, I never hid that I was smoking, but I know I hadn't been caught with it. But they knew. Yeah, fair enough. What I mean? Yeah. So I felt like I was targeted that day because I couldn't wait to go through the checkpoint. I finally had tax, NCT and insurance all at the same time. Yeah. And I was like, yes, here we go. And then he starts kicking tires and, you know, is the car in your name? And like just asking me loads of pointless questions. After waving on the car in front of me, do you know, it was pure discrimination, I think. And my accent as well. Your accent. And he didn't know me then. He wanted to know who she, like. Yeah. So he phoned into the station with my license then, and poof, 10 minutes later there's a drug thing on site. If you lose your license, would that fuck you up then, I suppose? Yeah, we mentioned it even earlier on, like with my mum's hospital appointments and stuff. Yeah. I'd be screwed. And in college, like I'm hoping to go to UL next year, either on campus in Limerick or in Turles. So either way I'm driving from West your car, yeah. So it's imperative, like. And as I said, my mum is in heart failure. She's at the heart failure clinic fairly often, like. Yeah. You know, or God forbid anything was to happen during the night and we can't wait around for an ambulance.
Yeah.
I need to be able to go.
Well, the sooner we get this shit sorted out, the better. Like, because
Big time.
people can't be left with all this stuff hanging over their head. It's so much weight for a person. Like, again, patients such as yourself, you should be focusing on your own health, getting healthy. Exactly.
Not fearing that my medicine is going to land me in prison.
Yeah, exactly. Like, to rob you of your ability to drive around the place. Like, that's essentially a limb that we have. Like, once you have a car and you're able to drive around the place, to lose it, to lose it is like losing a leg to the equipment. You know, it's like you're messed up. Not to
mention, like, I've a huge family, but there's only me, mum, and dad in Roscrea. Everyone else is in Dublin or Eden Derry, or they're scattered. Like, so they really do depend on me.
Yeah,
you know? And that's a lot to carry in itself. No wonder I'm smoking.
Well, I suppose I think we might have covered enough ground there, unless you've any more you want to add in there, Aimee.
No, all I want to say is free to weed.
Free to weed, yes.
Yeah. Let our people grow.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I know.
And thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, no, not at all. It's been great. As I said, I'm delighted to be able to actually sit across the table from another person and do this in person, because those Zoom calls are very difficult. There's always it's hard to know when the other person stop talking and you're ready to talk back to them. Like, cause, you don't know if there's a lag.
Social cues don't work on technology.
So I'm hoping I can do more of these with people, and maybe even get bigger again. Like, I have an ability here to hook up a couple of extra microphones there, so we can get maybe a bit more of a group thing happening. Like, yeah. So we'll be working on that over time. But thanks very much for gracing me with your time. And but where can people find you? Actually, is it the Endo with blog or Endo at Aimee Blog?
Yeah,
_ blog.
It's and Aimee is AIMEE, so it's a little bit
important.
awkward. Yeah. Endo with AIMEE _ blog.
Yeah, and is that on Instagram?
That's on Instagram. It's the page is just Endo with Aimee on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I'm Aimee Lou B on Twitter, but I haven't got the app back since I had that meltdown in March. So if I'm quiet on Twitter for the time being, it's because I'm trying to deal with my mental health and not get sucked into a political black hole.
Excellent, yeah.
But I will be back at some point.
That's the job. Well, thanks again, Aimee, and to everybody listening, thanks again.
Thanks a million.
Not a bother. And thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that interview there with myself and Aimee Brown. Thanks again to Aimee for taking the time out of her day there to come down and do that interview with myself. Delighted to be able to actually do one in person for the change, as I say. So, guys, I look forward to getting more out there to you. I have one to release with Karen Gray very soon also, so I look forward to getting that out there to you as well. So yeah, stay blazed, guys, and keep her lit. I'll be back with more again before you know it. Much love and peace.